We'll call the meeting to order. Would everybody join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. A little tutorial. We're going to have a little tutorial right now.
I think a lot of you have seen this before, put on by Sean, but this is a reminder to make sure to speak directly and clearly into the microphone. If you move off, see how I disappeared that easily. I just want to show you. So if you start reading and then we'll lose you just like that. And the people on WebEx won't be able to hear you at all. So please make sure that you're only an inch or two away at most. You're speaking directly straight into the microphone. It is designed this way in order to prevent any background noise and feedback, which we would get otherwise. If we have somebody listening on the other side that's running the meeting, and they will let me know if we're having trouble hearing somebody, and I might come by and remind you to adjust your mic. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call of supervisors now. Here.
Sorry. Belsky. Here. Celebrity.
Here.
Gashke.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
O'Day.
Here.
Berg.
Here.
Ron Frederick. Nudo. Franco. Boyd Frederick. Gully. Wambolt. Uhas. Here. Beth. Here. Palmaville. Here. Nordigan.
Here.
Becker.
Here.
Winky.
Here.
Supervisors Grady, Gentz, Kubicki, and Mauer are excused.
And Jeff Gens?
Gentz.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Next on the agenda is citizens' comments. If there's any citizens wishing to speak, the podium is in the back of the room. Everyone who wishes to speak will have one opportunity to speak for 5 minutes. State your name and address for the record, please.
Veronica King. My address is 5518 34th Avenue, Kenosha. I'm here to speak tonight in regards to the resolution number 21, a resolution expressing Kenosha County's commitment to achieving racial equity and transforming systems and institutions impacting the health of our community. I want to begin with a definition of systemic racism. And this definition is from Derek Johnson, President and CEO of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And President Johnson defines systemic racism, also called structural racism or institutional racism, as systems and structures that have procedures or processes that disadvantage African Americans. I have a few charts that explain the adverse disparities that African Americans face, not only at the local level, state level, but at the national level. Okay. Racial disparities include areas such as employment, wealth, education, home ownership, healthcare, and incarceration. African Americans are underrepresented in high-paying jobs. People of color, and especially African Americans, are severely underrepresented at the top of the corporate hierarchy. African Americans have historically been underrepresented in the highest echelons of government. Black workers have historically earned far less than white workers. Similarly, overall income for African Americans was about 42% lower than that for whites in 2018. There's a similar disparity at the household level. Lower incomes mean that poverty rates for Black families is over twice that of white families. Educational opportunities remain starkly split by race. As with income, intergenerational educational mobility varies widely between racial groups. Racial disparity in marijuana arrests has actually gotten worse in recent years, even though more states are legalizing or decriminalizing marijuana. Black men are roughly 5 times more likely to be imprisoned than their white counterparts, and nearly 13 times as likely in the age group of 18 to 19-year-olds. Roughly half of those fatally shot by police are white, but Black Americans are fatally shot at a disproportionate rate compared to their representation in the U.S. population. So I ask you to adopt the resolution tonight and give us an opportunity here in the county of Kenosha to address some of the disparities that exist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other citizens' comments?
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Felt. I live at 3807 Van Buren Road. And here, along with my colleague Andrea Taylor, we work here at the Aging and Disability Resource Center.
Good evening. As Carolyn said, I work here at the Aging Disability Resource Center, and we have come up with a resolution by the Cultural Respect Builders, which our theme really is curbing our isms through education, self-awareness, and advocacy. Dear County Board of Supervisors, in 2013, the Division of Aging and Disability Services established an internal work group to support our understanding of the cultural dynamics and influences that impact our customers' lives and well-being. The purpose of our Cultural Respect Builders Committee is to identify and realize opportunities to strengthen our mission of inclusion and culturally competent service delivery. Kenosha County Aging and Disability Resource Center intends to be welcoming and inclusive to its consumers, regardless of age, race, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic status, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender, identity, and expression. Our objective is to ensure that everyone is treated with respect, served with compassion, and offer the available resources necessary to enhance the quality of their experiences. It is with this mission in mind that we endorse and support the Kenosha County Board of Supervisors in adopting the Racism as a Public Health Crisis resolution. Acknowledging that the organizational structures, policies, and practices contribute to racial disparities in the outcomes of our work, as a division of county government, we have much to gain from the county board's adoption of this resolution. We welcome the opportunity to examine our service delivery for structural bias, to better educate our staff on the impact of racism, and to equip ourselves with tools and resources to break down barriers to access valuable resources and valuable services we offer to elders, persons with disabilities, and their loved ones. The resolution supports our staff work group's efforts and elevates to the resolve to support optimal health for all our neighbors and community members. Respectfully, the Cultural Respect Builders of the Kenosha County Division of Aging and Disability Services, Alyssa Vasinick, Andrea Taylor, Carolyn Felt, Helen Sampson, Joseph Hamlet, Levi Stevenson, Lucy Ortiz, Sandor Mirani, and Susan Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments? State your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, my name is Leah Blau, and I live at 8355 57th Avenue. I'm here to speak on the resolution expressing Kenosha County's commitment to achieving racial equity and transforming systems and institutions impacting the health of our community. I was pleased to hear that this resolution passed through committee, but find it extremely troubling that 2 supervisors voted against this resolution. I listened to a recording of the committee meeting and heard Supervisor Aaron Decker state, among other things, that she does not believe systemic racism exists, and Supervisor Lon Winicky feels that laws are already in place to sufficiently ensure that all who make the effort in our nation have an equal chance to succeed. I find these statements extremely tone deaf in light of the recent deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and many others that came before them. It is apparent that neither of you know much about American history very well, or simply want to maintain the status quo. It appears that you're willfully ignorant or don't know enough to have a decent conversation about systemic racism. Racism is not a thing of the past. It was mandated by the Jim Crow laws in the 1960s and is embedded in our criminal justice system to this day. But it's easier for supervisors to believe it doesn't exist, which is truly unfortunate for your constituents. As supervisors, you should be supporting whatever it is necessary for the safety and protection of your constituents, and this includes dismantling systemic racism. To the rest of the board members, I ask that you support this resolution. I believe we can't make any meaningful changes toward racial equity until this first step is taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments?
Hi, my name is Stephanie Nez, and I live at 5944 3rd Avenue in Kenosha. So I'm also speaking to the assertion about systemic racism. And I would like to just say that the question of how and not if systemic racism is prevalent in American institutions and therefore in our community, I think it's too complex to address in this forum, but the best way that I can think of to make a compelling argument for the urgency to address it is to draw attention to how we measure individual success and progress and how this might be impacted by a history of racism. So for many of us who have white privilege, when we reflect on our goals and ambitions and what gives our lives meaning, we are able to draw on an individualism that is afforded to us as a result of not being identified by race. So whether purpose for you means career advancement or acquiring a comfortable and safe home for yourself and your family, or simply being able to go out and enjoy a nice meal, you're never thought of as a white person doing that thing. And you never have to consider what other people might think about your pursuits simply because of your race. Furthermore, most of the ways that we pursue purposeful progress in the society depend on some element of the acquisition of wealth or capital, and there is no denying by anyone that the wealth that we enjoy as a nation, not anyone's individual wealth, but widespread wealth that is responsible for the baseline comfort that Americans on the whole have gotten used to, that wealth was acquired through the forced acquisition of land from indigenous people and the exploitation of Black labor through the institution of slavery. And not only did these groups miss out on the opportunity to generate capital during that time, but they were beaten down physically and psychologically to a point where it was near impossible to catch up when they were no longer working for white people's explicit profit. So given the continued barriers presented from financial institutions, law enforcement, educational systems, and the distribution of federal accommodations over time, it's a miracle that Black people in America have made it as far as they have. And it is that spirit of persistence that we all like to believe is behind the comforts that we have earned. But I urge you to consider what kind of labor has not been required of you on your path to where you are today, and how we can finally eliminate that extra labor for those who've been oppressed for a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments?
Uh, Good evening. My name is Joel Trudell. I live at 7850 34th Avenue, District 9. I have 3 kids in our community. My son attends Tremper, and my girls go to Kenosha Montessori. I want to first thank everybody here for your service to your constituents in Kenosha. And I'm also here to urge all of you to pass the racial equity resolution. I'd like to start my comments by asking everyone to participate in a visualization exercise with me. By participate, what I mean is that you may feel compelled to nod your head yes or no at some point as we go on. All right, so here we are, right? Or here you are. You're at a fabulous, well-reviewed restaurant, enjoying your meal, when you notice a married couple is celebrating their anniversary. Later that same evening, you overhear a conversation between a tech entrepreneur and a big time tech investor. You heard them talking about a multi-million-dollar startup proposal. You finish your meal and have a great conversation with your server before you leave a tip on the table and head home. Okay. Now let's review and ask ourselves a few questions. Remember the couple that you saw celebrating their anniversary? Maybe, yes, no? Was that couple you imagined 2 married men? Number 2, remember that big time tech investor discussing a possible multi-million-dollar deal? Was that investor that you imagined an African American? Number 3, remember that great conversation you had with your server? Did the server you imagined look like me? A white guy? This exercise helps us understand that as human beings, we encounter life with our head filled with ideas of what married people, investors, and servers are supposed to look like. Unfortunately, similar things happen when we change the exercise's scenario for us to imagine people on welfare, people in prison, Mexican immigrants, protesters. I am also here to say these ideas in our heads about what types of people look like, it's not our fault. How can we overcome these unconscious biases? Well, first, we need to acknowledge they exist. And that is just what the resolution before you tonight is officially asking Kenosha County to do. It is obvious that there is public energy around this resolution. Why not harness this energy so we can work together for the good of Kenosha? I'd like to end my comments with a medical metaphor. If you were to get a cancer diagnosis, you have some options, right? You can deny it exists and let it eat away at you on the inside, or you can accept it and determine a path to hopefully overcome it. Let's choose the path to overcome. Vote to pass the vote to pass the racial equality resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments? Do you want to read some?
Is Holly here tonight?
You ready to speak?
Yeah, just a second so I can sign my name. Is Holly here tonight? Can't see. No? Okay. My name is Whitney Cabal. I never tell you where I live, but you can know that I live close by. Yesterday I kind of hit the ground running. I passed the homeless man in Uptown, and I got really upset because you know that we have a food desert out there, and we have a pharmacy desert out there. And I was trying to think about what my speech was going to be. So instead of going home, I started going door to door in all of our rougher neighborhoods up and down this entire city shoreline. I talked to several people, and I'd like to share a few stories with you and things that they told me. But before I do that, I'd like to talk about, if I live right over here on 38th Avenue, not far from Snap-on, I can get to 6 grocery stores, 2 Walgreens, and a dollar store in about 5 to 7 minutes. I want you to keep that in mind. Most of the people that I talked to yesterday have to drive at minimum about 12 minutes to get to a grocery store, about 15 minutes to get out to Walmart, which is where most of them are going. And a pharmacy is like 7 or 8 minutes, so a 7-minute drive, if you consider that walking in an area where they don't have, their own transportation, can be very difficult. So one woman that I spoke to, she moved me to tears because I asked her, I said, what is it like to live in a food desert? And she said, I got babies and I work a whole lot, but I don't have a car. When my baby gets sick at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm out of Tylenol, you catch me calling around all of my friends and family trying to figure out who can go and get me some Tylenol from the pharmacy because I'm not walking at 2 o'clock in the morning outside of Lincoln Park. And I cannot imagine a reality like that. And I don't think a lot of people who are sitting in this room making the decisions and writing the policies can imagine it either. But that is systematic oppression. Let's talk about how they moved when they rebuilt the Shalom Center. They built it on the other side of a town. How many miles is that from the area that needs it most? Let's talk about First Step. You close First Step. Let's talk about Pick and Save. What's going on with Pick and Save? I know that's not your decision, but we have a serious problem over there. There was like a corner market that is kind of like a grocery store, okay? And yesterday when I drove through that neighborhood, I don't know how many of you have hit the ground running, going door to door and approaching yourself. I will tell you, I only had a pistol pulled on me once. So, and I'm okay. But who here is going door to door and driving around these neighborhoods up and down these streets and look at what it looks like? And that corner store that probably had more than any of the corner markets is closed. Do you know what kind of food is in the corner markets? Food, chips, ice cream, soda, the cheap stuff. We have a serious problem in this city. And Mrs. Decker likes to talk about how systematic racism isn't real. This is systematic racism. This is systematic oppression. So while Erin is probably not capable of understanding that which she has not ever had to experience, it's up to the rest of you to try and help her understand. Because it's a serious problem. And another thing that I kind of want to talk on, which don't worry, I'm going to be working on it, is all of you are trying to talk about implicit bias training at the educational level, implicit bias training with the police force. Has anybody in this room ever had to take implicit bias training? It's like we've got an animal trying to run a 3-ring circus, and it doesn't work that way. So I just hope that you consider this woman's story, and you consider the man that was walking to the laundromat with 6 loads of laundry, tell me how he has to have his family take him to the grocery store, but they live about a half hour away, so he can only go every few weeks. This is a disaster. Racism is a public health crisis, and you might not understand it, but I'm hoping that you'll kind of go out on a limb here and you'll consider that the reason you don't understand it is because you've never had to experience it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other citizens? Seeing none. Reggie, you have some?
Yes, I have several that were emailed to me, and supervisors, you also have them on your desk. This first one is from Rick Gallo, 8036 18th Avenue, Kenosha, Wisconsin. I want to share my thoughts with you concerning two resolutions that come before the county board this week. The first concerns a resolution passed by the Human Services Committee expressing Kenosha County's commitment to achieving racial equity and transforming systems and institutions impacting the health of our community. In the committee, there were votes against it by Supervisor Decker, who stated, among other things, that she doesn't believe systemic racism exists, and Supervisor Winkie, who feels laws are already in place to sufficiently ensure that all who make the effort in our nation have an equal chance to succeed. I hope you will support this resolution. I disagree with the position set forth by Supervisors Decker and Winkie in committee. I support the resolution as written, and I hope you will join with your colleagues in supporting it. The second resolution concerns designating Wisconsin as a Second Amendment sanctuary state. There is no need to place such a referendum on the ballot in November. The Second Amendment is not under attack, and this would simply be a waste of time and county resources to include this referendum on the ballot. Please join your colleagues on the county board in voting against this in advance for your anticipated cooperation. The next is from Jody Muirhoff. If the job of Kenosha County Board Supervisor is to work to improve the lives of the people you represent, the two resolutions before you tonight stand in stark contrast. First, I urge you to vote yes on the resolution to achieve racial equity. Adoption of this resolution at any time would be a strong statement to our community about its leadership's commitment to working toward racial equity in our county. Following the horrendous death of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police officers, just one in our nation's long history of racial injustices, there has been a sustained national and local cry to work harder to address racial disparity. For this reason, this resolution is even more important and timely. The people of Kenosha County have knelt, raged, cried, marched, and prayed in solidarity for meaningful, substantial, and universal change to systems that have served to disadvantage and kill people of color. The racial equity resolution that the board will be voting on tonight acknowledges the disadvantages that people of color in our community face: economic, housing, education, transportation, criminal justice, and health outcomes. As a supervisor, you are so fortunate to be in a position to meaningfully put into action change to address these systemic inequities. You will be both acknowledging that these systems of oppression exist, but also that they must be changed in meaningful ways. Your yes vote on the resolution will show that you are not just doing the easy part of saying that Black Lives Matter, but that our county government is committing itself to doing the hard work to make meaningful changes to prove that Black lives in Kenosha County. Please vote yes on this resolution. I am also writing to urge you to vote no on the resolution to conduct a countywide advisory referendum to make Wisconsin a Second Amendment sanctuary state. While the resolution to achieve racial equity will improve the lives of people of color in Kenosha County who are experiencing poor health outcomes, wage gaps, housing inequity, and other disparities due to systemic racism, the Second Amendment sanctuary resolution does nothing to improve quality of life for citizens in Kenosha County or the state of Wisconsin in any meaningful way. In fact, this very board, which was elected to speak for the citizens of Kenosha County, has already voted down a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. The right to keep and bear arms is already enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. In addition, courts have already determined that the Second Amendment rights are not unlimited, as the ruling by the Supreme Court in the District of Columbia versus Heller illustrates. The court has affirmed that limits can be placed on the types of weapons that people can own and who can own them. Should changes to gun laws be proposed by future legislative bodies, either loosening current laws or tightening restrictions, those changes will be passed or rejected by voters and their elected officials at that time. Current governmental bodies and voters cannot legislate against the decisions of future governmental bodies and voters. The Constitution itself is a working document and is subject to modification should the majority of citizens wish it to be modified. A non-binding ballot resolution will do nothing to change that. I urge you to vote no on resolution to conduct a countywide advisory referendum and to return to focusing on pressing quality of life issues for the citizens of Kenosha County, such as passing the racial equity resolution. This is from Casimir Rodriguez, lives in Pleasant Prairie. I do not support the proposed Second Amendment sanctuary state referendum, not because I am for or against gun reform or control, but because the referendum is too broadly based and does not define exactly what it purports to do. The question posed designates that a federal constitutional right is somehow under immediate attack and requires protection, which it is not and does not. Additionally, as worded, it poses the question in a way that is incredibly loaded and thus unfair. Furthermore, the county-based referendum is weighing in on questions of constitutionality of which it has no authority to rule on. That responsibility is for the Supreme Court of the United States. Finally, when this would be voted upon and given to legislators, they, not the people, would have a mandate to construe this referendum in any way they see fit or deem conducive to creating a sanctuary state. Thank you for your attention. This is from Debbie Warble from Kenosha, Wisconsin. No, thank you. I completely do not endorse having this on the ballot in November. In such extreme, turbulent, anxiety-ridden chaos times, it would not be at all appropriate to encourage even larger gun volume and citizen use. I would happily support gun control, but not this. Quite frankly, I think this would be a tragic accident waiting to happen. With the country so divided, we can't take the chance of Alex Jones-type maniacs with guns in their hands. Thank you for letting me share my viewpoint. This statement is from the Kenosha County Democratic Party at 5712 7th Avenue, Kenosha, Wisconsin. A resolution expressing Kenosha County's commitment to achieving racial equity and transforming systems and institutions impacting the health of our community. 2 months ago, Kenosha County Democratic Party signed on to a Wisconsin Population Health Institute's resolution declaring that racism is a public health crisis in Wisconsin. By signing the Wisconsin Health Institute's resolution, our organization committed to a series of actions to make both our organization and our community a more equitable place for people of color. We were excited to hear that Kenosha County Board of Supervisors is also considering joining organizations and communities throughout the state to acknowledge that there is work to be done in order to achieve racial equity. As an organization, we recognize that healthy communities are communities in which everyone has equal access to health care, housing, education, childcare, job opportunities, and to justice. We acknowledge the systemic racism in our nation, state, and community advantages white people and disadvantages communities of color. Wisconsin has consistently ranked in the very bottom for the racial equity in nationwide surveys, including once again in 2020. The gaps in income, wealth accumulation, health outcomes, home ownership, educational outcomes, and employment are significant in our state. In Kenosha County, an African-American baby is almost 3 times more likely to die before his or her first birthday than a white infant. It's a shocking statistic, and that alone demonstrates that Kenosha County has work to do to transform our systems and institutions to make Kenosha a more equitable place for our community members of color. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The time is always right to do what's right." The time is right to move toward a better Kenosha County for our Black community members. You have the ability to do what is right by voting in favor of this resolution. Thank you. Next is from Adeline Green. My name is Adeline Green. I live at 6730 111th Avenue in Kenosha. I have lived in Kenosha for almost 30 years and was employed by Kenosha County for nearly 27 years until I retired from my position as Director of Workforce Development at the end of 2016. I am writing this letter to lend my support for the County Board resolution declaring racism as a health crisis in Kenosha. As an African American, I can attest to the fact that racism exists in this community, as well as in the state of Wisconsin and across this nation. Racism is systemic and institutional, and it works to the detriment of African Americans and other people of color. Wisconsin has been rated one of the worst places for African Americans to live, work, and go to school, and for Black men in particular. Wisconsin has the highest rate of incarceration of Black men than every other state in the U.S. except New Jersey. It isn't just by happenstance that these disparities occur. Racism plays a major role in the consistently poor outcomes for African Americans' health conditions, education levels, employment opportunities, and placement in the legal system. She refers to the report, the COWS report, which was emailed to all of you. While some may choose to dismiss the data or come up with other excuses as to why African Americans fare much worse than whites in Wisconsin, one thing is clear to me: ignoring these racial disparities won't fix this problem. Making statements that you don't believe systemic racism exists, as I heard Kenosha County supervisors state on tape at the Human Services Committee, shows Black people who live in this community that you choose not to see the racial roadblocks and disparities that they face in this community and in this country. Systemic racism is what entitles white people to call the police on Black people who are simply jogging in a park or walking in a neighborhood while Black, bird watching while Black, sitting in Starbucks while Black, walking home from the store while Black, swimming in a hotel pool while Black, selling bottled water while Black, driving while Black, barbecuing in the park while Black, or just lounging in their college dorm while Black. As its worst, systemic racism can result in the killing of unarmed Black people like Ahmaud Arbery, Elijah McClain, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, and many others at the hands of either the police or by white vigilantes who see Black people as guilty first and not worthy of being given the benefit of the doubt based on their skin color. Systemic racism is very real, and it must be acknowledged, or we will continue to have disparate outcomes for Black people living here in Wisconsin and elsewhere in the U.S. I support this resolution that declares racism as a health crisis in Kenosha, and I urge the full county board to endorse it as a starting place to acknowledge the problem of systemic racism and to develop action steps that begin to address the disparities that are getting worse instead of better for Blacks and other people of color living in Wisconsin and in Kenosha. Thank you. And this last one is from Atifa Robinson, who works at Life Course Initiative for Healthy Families, but she is a Kenosha County resident. Dear County Board of Supervisors, I am writing to express my concern about recent discussion and the pending decision regarding the resolution expressing Kenosha County's commitment to achieving racial equity and transforming systems and institutions impacting our community's health. I am a longtime resident of Kenosha, and I understand that the decision is about declaring racism as a public health crisis. Racial and health inequities are the leading cause affecting the lifespan of Black and Brown families today. The average African American lifespan is 55 to 56 years of age due to racism and lack of resources. As a community advocate for African American families within Kenosha community, I hope that the Kenosha County Board considers my request to work together with community partners and the Life Course Initiative for Healthy Families to develop a 3-year plan that will promote health equity for all races within Kenosha County. LIHF has diligently worked across Milwaukee, Racine, and Kenosha to address access to healthcare, infant mortality, and racial equity. Through research and data and community conversations, the LIHF team has learned the following. Black and Brown children in schools are experiencing discrimination at a higher level than white students. LIHF created an essay contest for students called What's a Healthy Community to You? To inspire students to promote health in their daily environment. It was presented by Kenosha County in 2018. Some students of all races wrote their essays about Black and Brown students not being treated equally in class settings. Some Black and Brown families reside in neighborhoods with poor housing conditions, lack of nutritious foods, or a complete food desert. The Brass community currently doesn't have access to an adequate grocery store. Families located in the area must go to neighborhood stores that do not offer healthy options, such as fruits and vegetables, to promote healthy birth outcomes. Black and Brown individuals are overlooked for employment opportunities based on race. Black and Brown individuals must obtain higher levels of education to receive high-level positions, while their white counterparts receive similar opportunities without the additional education. Black and Brown individuals are also compensated at a lower rate than their white counterparts with the same title. In 2018, the median income for African Americans was $34,715, and Latinx was $50,000, as reported by Building Our Future 2020. The data also shows that African American infants are 3 times more likely than Caucasians to pass before their first birthday. Wisconsin's infant mortality rate remains one of the highest in the United States, states LIHF in a 2020 report. The infant mortality for African Americans is 15 deaths per 1,000 live births, according to the DHS annual birth report from 2017. Infant mortality is the loss of a child, and it's not abortion. The leading cause are preterm births, chronic stress, and systemic racism. One organization calls systemic racism unconstitutional and promulgates by policies of federal, state, and local governments, and that we as a society have an obligation to remedy it. New policies must be put in place in Kenosha and Wisconsin to address systemic racism. Community members are starting to speak out about the differences made with Black and Brown individuals in employment, housing, healthcare, and education, as stated in an article by the Kenosha News. Experts weigh in on minorities, access to health resources, 2019. Systemic racism will not fix itself overnight, but with community partnerships and Life Course Initiative for Healthy Families at the table, we can build a plan to dismantle racism that will improve and restore Kenosha to a healthy state. The Community Dismantling Racism Plan can be a 3-year effort addressing schools, organizations, and health systems. The COVID-19 pandemic has reemphasized the racial disparities and disadvantages of Black and Brown families, and now more than ever, this is a public health issue. The LIHF team is willing to meet with the Kenosha County Board of Supervisors to discuss next steps and answer any questions you might have. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Antifa Robinson. If any of you, I don't know if she sent you all the email, But if anybody's interested, she has several links on there for the reports she was referring to.
That's it? That's everything, Reggie? Okay, thank you. Citizens' comments are over. Announcements of the chair. I just want to let you know that there were 2 meetings today with the bonding rating agencies. One from 10 to 12 this morning and then 2 to 4 this afternoon. And the results will be out about April 12th or 13th, just prior to our going out for the bonding issues that we have coming up. We hope to try to get a AAA, but they wouldn't give us even a hint today, so we'll just have to wait till we find out what they come up with. There were 2 good presentations by Ellers and the county executive and his staff. Any chairman supervisor reports? Hearing none.
I got some.
Who is over here? All right. You want? I'll go to the chairman first.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just 2 quick updates from my district, district number 7. One is a very positive one. One is more negative. The positive, let's start with the good news. Last week, UW Extension and other community partners and volunteers had a very successful food drive in the Uptown neighborhood. There were over 400 families that were served. And these aren't necessarily just from this neighborhood, but I'm sure many of the participants were. And so I'd just like to thank UW Extension, all of the community partners and volunteers that helped to make that food drive in the Uptown neighborhood in District number 7 such an overwhelming success. Then on a negative update, I want to talk about the census participation. As you know, every 10 years, the government is required to count the citizens, count the residents who live in an area. And sadly, it's oftentimes those who would most benefit from being counted. It's the neighborhoods that would benefit the most from participating that are the least likely to participate in the census. And District number 7, my district, is no exception to that. In fact, based upon the latest information that I have from several weeks ago, track number 11, the census track number 11, which is right in the heart of my district, currently only has about a 40% participation rate. So only about 4 in 10 people have participated so far. And the reason that that's tragic, the reason that it's so important to participate in the census is that being counted now helps to set the stage for the next 10 years. And as I said, oftentimes it's the communities that participate the least that would benefit the most. We're literally talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in federal and state funds that are allocated to different communities and neighborhoods based upon this census that happens only once a decade. The 911 emergency system is oftentimes set up based upon the census count. Health providers and hospital care systems, highways, roads, school lunch programs, on and on, are all based upon being counted. And so I want to do everything that I can to urge the residents, not only of my district, number 7, but of our entire county, to not be distracted by everything else that's going on. We have a lot of very important things that are happening in our communities right now. But the census is one of those important things. And so in addition to participating in everything else that's happening, I want to encourage the residents of District 7 and the county as a whole to participate in the census in order to help set the stage for success for the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. President Udo, what have you got?
Okay, yeah, just a couple comments. One is
Get closer to the mic so we.
just a couple comments. One of it is thank you to Reggie for giving us the new directory of public officials. But I have a question specifically on page 21. Okay, under the Brookside Board of Trustees, on the names that you have there. I don't know if that was a mistake or if it was done on purpose, but the names of the trustees on the board, I believe they are wrong. Would you like to comment on that or see what happened on that?
It may be a mistake. I did not put the book together myself this year. We will look into it.
Okay, but I mean, who put the book together?
Well, my office does. But
did you get the information from administration or
yes,
whatever? You did.
From all the different departments.
For all the different. Okay, well, I will touch on this here maybe later on tonight, but I think that helps to prove the point that I'm going to try to make later on tonight. The other thing is last night we had a meeting for Public Works. One of the items on the agenda for the Public Works Committee was a letter to Finance to redirect an overflow of funds of about $70,000, which came from a budget amount of about $360,000 to purchase a truck, and it came about 20% lower than projected. In just this last month, and just in Public Work Department, estimate came somewhere between 15 to 20% lower than projected, and that they were passed in the budget. I'm not sure what the other departments are doing. I asked them last night why it's done. I don't know. Is it done on purpose so administration can divert that overflow without the full board approval? I know this is going to finance and the next one, so I hope that the finance department is going to ask question and inquire on that, because it seems like every time it's done, and this money could be used for other things. Not too long ago, like actually at the last meeting, I believe it was the last meeting, unanimously, we passed a resolution for body cams, which were struggling to come up with the funds. This was $270,000 that could be used for that. And it seems every year that's what comes up. Overstate the budget, and then the money it's used because they can do pretty much whatever they do. So hopefully at the budget time, we could change it where it's going to have to come to the full board. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other supervisor reports? Hearing none. Full business.
Ordinance, second reading to required. Ordinance 11 from the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee. An ordinance amendment of the Kenosha County General Zoning and Shoreland Floodplain Zoning Ordinance, amending Section 12.22-6, Adult Establishments. From Planning, Development, Extension Education Committee, Supervisor Gaschke, yes. Mauer, yes. Beth, yes. Nudo, yes. Rodriguez, excused.
Supervisor Gaschke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move ordinance number 11.
Motion by Supervisor Gaschke, second by Supervisor Beth. Supervisor Gaschke.
Thank you. Information has been emailed out to the entire county board about this. I'll just make a few brief introductory comments. This has been a very long process. This has been a comprehensive review undertaken by outside counsel. And the reason that this happened is this particular ordinance has not been reviewed in the last 16 years. And over that time, there's been a lot of significant changes in the case law, and there's been significant changes within our county. We've had 3 towns incorporated, Bristol, Summers, Salem Lakes, within the past 16 years. And like I said, there has been many different legal case law and jurisprudence things established over the past 16 years. So what this boils down to is we as a county want to make sure that we are in compliance with the current state of the law as it currently stands. And so all of the changes that were made, really what we did was streamlined many of the definitions. We removed things that were superfluous or out of date. We removed a prohibition against the service of alcohol. We also made some additional requirements to help promote the health and safety of patrons and others participating in these type of establishments. So again, this is just a very common sense update, something that has not happened in 16 years. And this is simply streamlining and bringing us in line with the current state of the law as it stands. This did pass our committee. As I mentioned, this has been in the works for over a year. Many of our dedicated staff and others have been working hard on this, along with all of the local municipalities. And I do urge your support of this tonight. Thank you.
I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood.
Are you
Rich,
talking
before,
on this one now?
Huh?
Are you talking on his motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you stated how everybody voted on committee, I believe you said that I voted yes.
I think you voted no.
You are correct. You voted no. I apologize.
Thank you.
For the record, Supervisor Noodle voted against ordinance 11 in committee.
Supervisor Rodriguez, you have your light on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make it known this was tabled, if my memory is correct, at a previous committee meeting, and then I was out of state for when it was voted on next. But I won't be supporting this. I get that things needed to be updated and changed with some of the case law we had, but I think we went a little too far in this case. And what we talked about, or what I brought up in committee, is these are establishments that not everybody necessarily wants in their communities. But I think it's very clearly evident that if we adopt this tonight, we're telling, potential business owners and potential new business in the county that they're not welcome here in this county. And I don't think that's really for us to decide. I think that's for the people of Kenosha County to decide. As this is written, it's just very anti some of these businesses. And I can elaborate more if any of my colleagues would like me to. But I don't think it's really our place to tell businesses what we do and don't want in Kenosha County, as long as they're not violating the law. And this does exactly that. And it makes it kind of irrational to hold or to open one of these businesses, and pretty much makes it so patrons can't patronize one of these businesses. So that's all. So I'll be voting against it tonight.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote.
For ordinance 11, Gully.
Aye.
Celebrity. Winky.
No.
Beth.
Aye.
Ron Frederick.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Nordigan.
No.
O'Day.
Aye.
Belsky.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Nay.
Gashke.
Aye.
Boyd Frederick. Nudo. Wambolt. Franco. Decker.
Aye.
Uhas.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Palmaville.
Aye.
Fifteen yes, 4 no.
Motion carries. Thank you. New business.
Resolution 18 from Supervisor Rose and Supervisor Nudo, a resolution regarding county board meeting location.
I'm going to refer that to executive committee. Number 19.
Resolution 19 from the Human Services Committee, a resolution to appoint Mr. David Celebrity to the Brookside Board of Trustees. Human Services Committee, Belsky, yes. Berg, yes. Beth, yes. Celebrity, abstain. Decker, no. Gully, yes. Winky, no.
Supervisor Belsky.
I move resolution 19.
A motion by Supervisor Belsky, second by Supervisor Berg. Supervisor Belsky on the motion.
Mr. David Selbury, his, Mr. Selbury was approved in committee. We reviewed his resume, and based on his business acumen and his judges and qualifications, I urge you to support this appointment.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
John?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had two questions in committee that were not answered, so I just wanted to bring them up here. I actually had three questions. One was answered. One of them was, what was the reason why Supervisor Nudo wasn't reappointed? And that this was to replace Supervisor Nudo, and did he not want to be reappointed? I talked to Supervisor Nudo, and he actually did want to be reappointed. And so I just wanted to make that known that Supervisor Nudo did want to be reappointed, but he was not. Thank you.
Supervisor Selby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the subject of this resolution, I will be abstaining from tonight's vote.
All right. All those in favor?
Well, I think
gonna-
I'm on this board too yet. I wasn't taken out yet. Sorry to disappoint you, Mr.
You
Chairman.
want to talk now?
Yeah, please.
Okay, go ahead.
If it's okay with you.
That's fine.
Okay, let me start by apologizing if I get emotional or sound angry about the comments I'm about to make. Some of you have asked me why I did not want to or was not reappointed on the Brookside Board of Trustees. I was appointed and reappointed on this committee by the present county executive, where I also was elected vice chairman unanimously by the Board of the Trustees. When my term expired, I asked when he was going, and when I say I asked him when he was going, I mean the county executive. Sorry, I guess I'm getting emotional now, or angry, whatever you want to call it. When he was going to reappoint me, and he said, let's wait until after the election. I asked him again after the election, and he said, we'll see how you conduct yourself next week, which that week would have been the week we got sworn in and elected chair and vice chair. When he called me and told me I was not going to be reappointed, I asked him why, and he'd say, you're not an advocate of Brookside. I said, what? And he went out to say, you were against purchasing an aviary, against fundraisers to purchase patio furnitures, and you're not a team player because you ran for vice chair against Monica when you knew you did not have the votes to win, and she was my pick. That and other reasons makes me believe that he cut deals with some supervisors, including the one being appointed now, and made commitments like this appointment in order to have his chosen people to be in leadership positions so it can have full control of Kenosha County. I will be voting against this appointment, and I hope everybody will think on what I say, because what's happening now, it will happen to you if you ever disagree with them. Maybe if you send them a message, it will start to govern again in the way it used to be, and not with this ego and hypocrisy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call requested.
Resolution 19, Gully,
Aye.
Celebrate, abstain,
Abstain.
Winky,
No.
Beth, Ron Frederick,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Nordigan,
No.
O'Day,
Yes.
Belsky,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
No.
Gashke,
Aye.
Boyd Frederick, Nudo, Wambolt, Franco, Decker,
No.
Uhas,
Aye.
Berg,
Aye.
Palmaville.
Aye.
Twelve yes, 6 no, 1 abstain.
Motion carries.
From the Resolution 20 from the Human Services Committee, a resolution to reappoint Dr. Rita Ventura to the Kenosha County Board of Health. Human Services Committee, Belsky, yes. Berg, yes. Beth, yes. Celebry, yes. Decker, yes. Gully, yes. Winky, yes.
Supervisor Belsky. We have a motion by Supervisor Belsky, second by Supervisor Beth. Supervisor Belsky.
I would ask that the board approve Dr. Rita Ventura to serve on the Kenosha County Board of Health. In our committee, we reviewed her experience and qualifications, and I think that is appropriate to approve her for her reappointment.
For discussion.
Yeah, thank you. I might be repeating myself now, but my vote tonight is based on the reason that, in my opinion, the county executive lately is making all his appointments with the expectation that the person appointed to these committees will not ask any questions and vote in the way he wants them to do. So for this reason, until he decides to govern in the way he used to, I will vote against any of his committee appointments.
Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to whoever can answer this question, maybe the chairwoman of the committee. I see listed on here that her special interests are what I assume to be combating child sex trafficking. And I see that she's taken some classes as recent as last summer. Does this committee do anything with that? Are they doing anything actively, just for my own curiosity, to fight sex trafficking of children, especially so here in Kenosha County?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. I would just, whether it's, I'm not sure, if this is the right committee to look into that, or maybe it's judiciary and law, or even human services, but I think that's something that's worth us taking a look at in the future as well.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call is requested.
For Resolution 20, Belsky.
Aye.
Berg.
Aye.
Beth.
Aye.
Celebry.
Aye.
Decker.
Aye.
Franco.
Aye.
Boyd Frederick. Ron Frederick.
Aye.
Gashke.
Aye.
Gully.
Aye.
Nordigan.
Aye.
Nudo. O'Day.
Aye.
Palmaville.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Wambolt. Winky.
Aye.
Uhas.
Aye.
I believe the motion carries.
Resolution 21 from the Human Services Committee, a resolution expressing Kenosha County's commitment to achieving racial equity and transforming systems and institutions impacting the health of our community. Human Services Committee, Belsky, yes. Berg, yes. Beth, yes. Celebry, yes. Gully, yes. Decker, no. Winky, no.
Supervisor Belsky. Motion by Supervisor Belsky and a second by Supervisor Gully. Supervisor Belsky.
May I speak to the specific resolution comments, my personal comments?
I didn't hear you.
I'd like to speak to the resolution.
Go ahead.
I'm here tonight to ask for your approval of the resolution expressing Kenosha County's commitment to achieving racial equity and transforming systems and institutions impacting the health of our community. If you were to meet me for the first time, I would hope that you would not view me according to societal standards. The descriptive words one might use include overweight, blonde, white woman. Sadly, this is how we initially judge people, by the way they look, coupled with the negative characteristics associated with our preconceived beliefs. The full story of who I am, or who anyone else is, should not be based on what you see alone. There is way more to knowing someone other than the initial thoughts based on someone's appearance. Those descriptive words do not encompass my story, my experiences, my perspectives, or my insights. Moreover, judging someone based on your preconceived suspicions or negative characteristics do not fairly define who they are, but sadly, it defines all of us who get caught up in the evil trap of being racist. This is why I fight for diversity, inclusion, equality, and equity, as all of us need to do more and strive to be better human beings. While I will never claim to have walked in the same path as some of you here tonight, here is my story and why this resolution is personal to me. To look at me, you may not know that I'm a second-generation Armenian American. My father was a handsome, Middle Eastern-looking man who was subjected to racism in school and in the Marines because of the way he looked and the foreign language he spoke. Our family suffered genocidal racism through systematic mass murder and expulsion of 1.5 million ethnic Armenians between 1914 and 1923 from Eastern Turkey. My grandmother, as a young child, watched the extermination of her family and was placed in an orphanage camp with tracking numbers tattooed onto her arm. Miraculously, relatives were able to free her from Turkey and send her to America. Even though she escaped Turkey, the United States did not provide her and her family a safe haven from hate. While my family did not fear mass execution in America, the presence of racism was profound. As I grew up in Kenosha, I witnessed firsthand the impact racism had on my father as he grew up in the old neighborhood between 29th Avenue and 63rd Street. He struggled with his identity and heritage to the point of not wanting his own children to learn how to speak Armenian, so they would avoid the racism he felt growing up in the English-speaking community. His personal experience caused him to struggle with mental illness his entire life, and in turn, it had a profound impact on me and how I will never stop working to extinguish racism in all forms. I will always oppose acts of injustice, especially acts of racial injustice, gender violence, and discrimination of all types. That's not to say that I haven't or will not make mistakes, prejudge or cast negative characteristics on someone. I may or will. However, I will never stop working to end the evils of racism. Let me be clear. I am not claiming to be a person of color. I'm far from it, but I will not stand here in silence as if racism does not exist, as I have watched it nearly destroy my father, and I'm watching it now in our own community. We need to do more to end racism, and this is why I'm asking you to support this resolution. In an article published by Street Roots titled "The Racist Foundation of American Healthcare Policy," it identified the importance of understanding the history of who has access to federal dollars for healthcare in the United States and who doesn't. The article holds that this inequality has structural roots in the racism that has divided this country since the Civil War, roots that are still playing out today in the Supreme Court. A look back to that historic time may help us understand how racism is foundationally interwoven into our federal healthcare policy and why we are the only high-income country in the world that does not provide universal health care. Moreover, it may also help us to understand why wealthy Caucasians are far more likely to remain healthy throughout our lives than others who are not. The years immediately following the Civil War were prevalent with epidemics. Slavery had technically ended, but the South was in ruins. Freed blacks sent urgent pleas for help, but white leaders were profoundly ambivalent about providing that help. The real motivation for providing health care had been to get formerly enslaved people healthy again, as we were desperate for a strong agricultural labor force. That motivation is still threaded into our present-day insurance practices. American national health care is mirrored in our present-day practice of employers providing health insurance. Why do employers provide health insurance? Arguably, it is not out of compassion for their workforce. It's a direct result of protecting their workforce, their investment. The minor federal health care relief programs that were established following the Civil War were quickly dismantled by the former slave states. Thereafter, this pattern of racial discrimination in the American healthcare landscape became embedded in our system and remains today. The core cause of racism is structured within a system that increases over generations. Therefore, such systems of racism are not about any one person's individual views. Rather, they are societal views. The CDC's social determinants on health states that conditions in the places where people live, learn, work, and play affect a wide range of health risks and outcomes. We know that poverty limits access to healthy foods and safe neighborhoods, and that more education is a predictor of an individual's better health. We also know that differences in health are striking in communities with poor social determinants of health, such as unstable housing, low income, unsafe neighborhoods, or substandard educational opportunities. By applying what we know about social determinants of health, we can not only improve individual and population health, but also advance health equity. Most people in the United States are negatively affected by racism, are affected by systemic racism, also called institutional or structural racism. Systemic racism is forms of oppression and privilege that affects most every aspect of our society, to our laws, education, housing, employment, representation in leadership positions, justice systems, media, culture, and everyday interactions with others. This form of racism is often more harmful than explicit racism. The core cause of racism is structured within a system that increases over generations. Therefore, such systems are not about individual views. Rather, they're about societal views, and I cannot stress that enough. The core of this resolution is to bring uncomfortable discussions of racism to the table and not fool ourselves into thinking that it does not exist. The United States and our own community has made progress in eliminating some of the institutional and legalized racial discrimination of the past, but that does not mean that we are finished. Let me contrast this with explicit racism, or racism that is a conscious choice to actively hate or discriminate someone of another race. Some people equate it to consciously using racial slurs or joining groups like the KKK or neo-Nazis. While this remains a serious problem in our country, it's a very small part of the actual racism that occurs, and we are fortunate that our community strongly opposes and stands together against any type of explicit racism. Nonetheless, that does not mean that it does not exist in Kenosha, but gratefully, I am confident that everyone in this room agrees with me that this is something that none of us will ever tolerate. Life is full of uncomfortable moments, and truthfully, this is one of them. Engaging in conversations about racism may trigger a range of defensive actions, feelings, and behaviors such as anger, fear, denial, and silence. The first step is acknowledging that racism does exist and behaviors take many forms. For those of us who are leaders in government, we have an obligation to not only participate in these uncomfortable dialogues, but we must use it to guide our actions to ensure the public has confidence in our government. Passing this resolution tells our community that we are listening to them, that we hear their calls for justice, and that we want to be part of the solution that makes our community an even better place to live tomorrow than it is today. This resolution is a step in the right direction. It's a small step that needs to be built upon. With your vote of approval, the real work begins. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Franco.
No, I didn't.
Your light's on, okay. Terry.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the resolution before the body this evening. It's a policy statement. It sets forth goals and it's a call for implementation. but it's one that can be easily forgotten, and I don't want it forgotten, and therefore I would offer this amendment. It would be at the end of the resolution at page 3, would be as follows: be it further resolved that the chair of the Human Services Committee annually report to the Kenosha County Board of Supervisors at the first meeting of August each year on the progress for the implementation of this resolution.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion.
I
On
have
the amendment.
no further discussion on it, Mr. Chairman.
On the
motion.
Go ahead.
I would ask, I don't have a problem with that amendment, but I would ask if we could move it either to the fall or the winter so that we can see what, if any, progress is made this year after we pass this. If we did like November or December, just so we can see where have we gotten in the few months since, I assume this is going to pass tonight, where have we gotten in the few months since this passes?
Instead of a year from now? You want to know a year and 3 months?
Or maybe it's not, changing, the amendment that Supervisor Rose made, but if the chairwoman of the committee would be willing to put that on her agenda for, late fall or early winter, just to kind of see, where are we, how far have we gotten since passing this?
Supervisor Rodriguez, I'd be happy to.
All right, well, then I've got no problem with the amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on the amendment?
I was going to I brought this up in a committee level of it. And I was ensured that it would be brought up as to reporting of what we are doing on the county side in regards to this. Obviously, I'm going to support the amendment and the resolution, but some of the things that I have written down here is initially I was not going to support this because there are no hard changes. People of color have heard from white politicians forever, for decades. We're going to help you. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then nothing comes about from it. Having spoken to people of color, they agreed it's a necessary step. However, time will tell. We need to see action on this though. And I agree with the reporting. I think it should be sooner than that though. November is great, but maybe every 6 months at the least. I want it every quarter, but every 6 months at the least, so that we see what is actually happening. Because if you look at the most diverse districts in this county, have the lowest voter turnout. Why is that? I mean, there can be a variable reasons for that, but one of those reasons is they're tired of hearing it. They're tired of hearing what's going to be happening. Accountability, right? But we need to see the change instead of hearing talk. And if you would allow a friendly amendment to be that every 6 months there's a report. Supervisor Rose.
You want to answer that, Terry?
The resolution stands. I think annual report a year from now gives adequate time for some action. I don't think it needs to be in every quarter. I think let's start it off with next year at this time. Calls for substantial change. Let's see if it's done. My resolution stands.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I originally read the resolution, had a lot of questions, and for me, in my profession, I look for the root cause, and the root cause is everything, or causes. I didn't see anything about that in here, and I guess what I'm saying is there's not enough meat on the bones. We need to put meat on the bones. I would reflect what Supervisor Berg said about promises made and promises never kept. If this is truly the first step and only the first step, I'd like to see a layout of what we're going to do. We need the city, the county, and the citizens all involved working together, and let's get down to the root causes and build it from there. Because otherwise nothing's going to get done. There'll be a lot of yelling and screaming and shouting and, wailing and skirling, and nothing will get done. And we can't just pass a resolution and then not move forward with it. And that's my concern with it. I will support this resolution more than likely, based on if there's something else that comes out that would force me not to. But we've got to put meat on the bones. We've got to do it systematically, to use the word, it's a process, and move through the process. We have to have dates. We have to have meetings set up, just like we do here. It cannot fall within the cracks, and it has to be moved forward. And if the chairman of the Human Services Committee is going to agree to that, agree to the previous amendment, I could find my way supporting this.
I believe she did.
I do agree with that, and I did make the commitment at the committee level that we would provide quarterly reports on our progress.
Okay. Lon,
This is only a comment.
is it about the amendment now?
It's about the amendment.
Okay.
It is about the amendment. I don't know, there's a few people here that can remember 1973, 74, 75. And I'm in favor of processes, systems, and not excluding people. Government in that time frame came down and mandated employers, there were quotas that you had to hire minorities and women, to the point that this personal experience, I took a job that I was less skilled for because of government quotas. Everybody was getting a job, whether they were qualified for it or not. I am not against this resolution. I don't want to see government turn this resolution into that situation, that we repeat history again and start excluding other people in favor of other people instead of just being across the board equity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Rose, can I have you repeat the amendment for my minutes?
Be it further resolved that the chair of the Human Services Committee annually report to the board at the first meeting in August as to the progress toward implementation of the resolution.
Thank you. Supervisor Uhas on the amendment?
Aye.
Winky?
Yes.
Wambolt? Rose?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Palmaville?
Yes.
O'Day?
Yes.
Nudo? Nordigan?
Yes.
Gully?
Yes.
Gashke?
Aye.
Ron Frederick?
Yes.
Franco? Boyd Frederick? Decker?
Aye.
Celebrity?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Berg?
Aye.
Belsky?
Yes.
It is unanimous. 19.
On the motion now.
Yeah, the original one as amended.
On the original motion.
Yep.
I would just ask that on the 13th, whereas, let me find it. Double counted, so I really hope it's the 13th for the rest of you guys. It reads, whereas due to decades of policies like redlining and bias lending, white people are 3.7 times more likely to own a house than their black counterparts, and 1.5 times more likely than the Latinx population. I'd just like to change Latinx, and I want to read something quickly. I'd like to change that to Latino. I just want to read a few things for everybody here tonight. Swarthmore College student newspaper, two Hispanic individuals wrote in the paper, they described Latinx as a blatant form of linguistic imperialism and claimed it was an attempt to force American ideals onto people living in Latin America because it wasn't tailored to native Spanish speakers. Through the letter X, though the letter X in Spanish can take on pronunciations similar to the English X, it can also take on an S sound, an H sound, or an H sound. By replacing O's and A's with X, the word Latinx or Latinx, there's various pronunciations of it, is rendered laughably incomprehensible to any Spanish speaker without some fluency in English. They wrote, quote, "It does not provide a gender neutral alternative for Spanish speaking non-binary individuals and thus excludes them." Writer Hector Luis Alamo echoed the frustration in an opinion piece titled "The Xing of Language, the Case Against Latinx." Alamo, an Afro-Latino whose family hails from Honduras and who is the founder of Enclave magazine, argued that the term constitutes, quote, "a bulldozing of Spanish, and it's, quote, an academic word that a group always thinks, and that group always thinks it knows what's best for the rest of us. Activists and people who want to appear more liberal have adopted the word and are calling out people for not using it. It's a critique that has been leveled at terms like cisgendered and non-binary. All were devised and propagated by academic or elite academic circles, but Latinx carries the added whiff of imperialism. I want to caution everyone reading against the arrogant supposition that Latin Americans need U.S. Latinx folks to teach them that Spanish has sexist elements. What I'm getting at here is, obviously as a member of the Latino community, Latinx is quite frankly seen as a joke amongst at least every Latino person I've come into contact with. We see it as a whitewashing of, the various dialects of the Spanish language, each unique to each country, and we're not asking for it. And so we're proud to be Latino. The way I look at it, I'm a Latino, my sister's a Latina. When we're together and you put us in a group, we're Latinos. And this has nothing to do with our friends who may be transgendered or non-binary in the Latino community. That's just how it's how Spanish works. We are all Latinos. Doesn't matter if, you claim to be cisgendered or, whatever the case is, gay, straight, whatever, you're Latino, and we're proud of that. So I would just like to change Latinx to Latino. So that'll be my motion.
That have to be an amendment, Joe. You got a second on that? Any discussion? Ready to vote on the amendment?
Could somebody please read the amendment? It's pretty hard to hear back there. What are we changing?
Get into the mic really close.
All right. Can you hear me back there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. I got to find it again. Hold on. 13th one. There it is. Okay.
Supervisor Frederick, you need to shut your microphone off and you'll be able to hear Supervisor Rodriguez better.
Okay. I had it, but now I got to find it again. Okay, here it is. Whereas, due to decades of policies like redlining and biased lending, white people are 3.7 times more likely to own a house than their black counterparts and 1.5 times more likely than the Latino population is what it would be changed to.
Got it, Ron? All right. All those in favor of the amendment? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Back to the motion.
Roll call.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to propose an amendment, but like my colleague last meeting, Supervisor Rodriguez, he broke it up into 3 separate sections, so that way you could vote on each idea separately. So I have 3 different motions I'd like to make. One of them is to add the words, and I have this typed out for Reggie, if they should pass. The first one is, whereas access to a quality education leads to success, and whereas charter schools and school vouchers have led to increased educational success in students, and whereas minorities tend to get degrees in lower paying careers than Caucasian graduates, and whereas careers in the trades are seeing a shortage of workers and an increase in salaries, and so then those are the whereases, and then I would like this added to the bullet points in the second, be it further resolved. Advocate for increase options in education, including but not limited to charter schools and school vouchers, and encourage people of color to pursue careers in the trades and higher paying degrees. That's the wording I'd like to add. The reason is one of the things that I learned online was that there is an income difference between Caucasians and African Americans, but it's not necessarily because they're getting paid less. It's because they're being steered to careers that pay less. That Caucasians go into careers a lot of times that are higher paying. So I believe we need to advocate for people of color to go into careers that earn more money. And the trades right now, even though it's not a bachelor's degree, the money is unbelievable in some of those trades because of the shortage of workers. For example, welders coming right out of their degree or their apprenticeship, they can earn 6 figures. And I'd love for us to advocate steering people of color to going into those high paying jobs.
So was that 3 different things or all one wrapped into one?
No, that's one.
Okay.
That's the first one because it's got one.
Okay.
Be it further resolved.
All right. And who seconded it?
Second.
On Aaron's motion? Discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no issue with this, and I'll leave this for a later point, but I grew up going through the school system here in Kenosha, and I attended either charter schools or, school choice or student choice schools throughout that entire time. What I think charter schools here in Kenosha are unique, and I've spoken with school board members about it in the past, the current school board, is charter schools in Kenosha are pretty unique, and they're really incredible. And so what this does is this tells people, let's continue taking advantage of these charter schools. The educators that are inside these schools I can't speak highly enough of them. And this isn't, a lot of people think that charter schools are 100% private schools. And here in Kenosha, it's actually the opposite. The charter schools I attended growing up here in Kenosha were all part of KUSD. And it was something where the structure is a little bit different. The curriculum is more catered towards most of the time what those children are actually interested in. And it's my belief that I came out of my senior year of high school, having gone through these types of schools, a more well-rounded student and better prepared for the university level.
I'm not going to support this amendment for the reason that for us, the county, to tell constituents or the residents of this county to support one form of schooling over the other, charter versus public, is not our place. Second, we're putting a political twist on it by saying to support vouchers. No, I'm not going to support that. I'm not going to deny that charter schools are beneficial based on the children or the child. I have 2 out of my 3 go to charter schools here in Kenosha. But I'm not going to play politics with this one.
Thank you. Laura?
I won't support those amendments as well. I believe that they have no place in the resolution for achieving racial equity.
Any other discussion on that amendment?
Gully,
Nope.
Belsky,
No.
Beth,
No.
Decker,
Yes.
Franco, Boyd Frederick, Gashke,
Nay.
Ron Frederick,
No.
Celebrity,
No.
Nudo, O'Day,
No.
Palmaville,
No.
Nordigan,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Wamble, Winky,
Yes.
Uhas.
No.
Berg is a no also.
What? Berg, did I miss? Oh, Andy, Supervisor Berg.
No.
Sorry.
Everybody?
Yes. 12, no. And 7, yes.
Okay.
Next one.
So this next one, I have some whereases and then also, again, the bullet point. Whereas in 1960, only 22% of African-American children were raised in single-parent families, while in 2020, about 70% of African-American children were raised in single-parent families. And whereas roughly 30% of African-Americans are poor, but only 8% of African-American married families live in poverty. And whereas the policies of the War on Poverty penalized low-income couples who did marry by reducing benefits, thus decimating intact families. And whereas children from fatherless homes are more likely to live in poverty-stricken households, drop out of high school, have behavioral disorders, join gangs, commit crimes, and end up in prison. And then the bullet point is educate men and women on the correlation between poverty and single parenthood and implement policies and programs that advocate for intact families.
Second. I'm going to support this one as well. And what we saw tonight was we had one of my district residents, Jermaine, I'm blanking on his last name, up for an appointment by the county executive. And it's actually something that he specializes in as well, working especially with fathers. I grew up with a single mom. Many of you guys know that. Older brother, younger sister. My mom worked incredibly long hours to provide for us, but we were definitely below that poverty line. We never went without. Always had clothes on our backs and food to eat at dinner time. And so I can't appreciate my mother enough for that. But it is difficult. And when, growing up and at the house, as we tended to get a little bit older, my brother's 6 years older than myself, and my sister's a year behind me. Mom was at work, and it was something that, especially my brother experienced it a lot. He kind of laid the hammer down on me growing up, but it is easy enough when you have a single parent household to get caught up in the wrong crowd. And this isn't just the whereas that speaks about some of the outcomes of fatherless homes. That has nothing to do with the color of those children's skin, but rather just the lack of that family structure and that guidance that comes from mom and dad. And this is something that I think is pretty universally recognized, that children in a two-parent home, I'd say statistically, do a little bit better than those in a one-parent home. I do have to give an exception to that. I think my mom did a pretty damn good job with myself. Maybe I'm a little biased with that, but I'm going to support this. I think it's important we educate, especially men, and I'll say that without hesitation. We have men out there of every color and every creed who don't really care what happens when they impregnate a girlfriend, whoever, random, you're responsible for that life. You helped create that life, and I want to see you in that child's life and see them grow up knowing who their dad is. I grew up not knowing who my dad is, and I don't resent that whatsoever. I think he's missed out on a pretty spectacular guy myself, but it's important. And I think many of you guys sitting behind me tonight, and we know that we have families here from the public, but a lot of primarily men behind me. You guys are married. You guys do have that two-parent structured household, and I think you guys, more than anybody, more than even me, understand how important that is to a child, especially when it comes in their adolescent years, for having that structure. So for those reasons, I'll be supporting this, and I hope my colleagues do as well.
Any other discussion? Another roll call?
Berg,
No.
Celebrity,
No.
Franco, Ron Frederick,
No.
Gully,
No.
Nudo, Palmaville,
No.
Rose,
No.
Winky,
Yes.
Uhas,
No.
Wambolt, Rodriguez,
Yes.
O'Day,
Yes.
Nordigan,
Yes.
Gashke,
Nay.
Boyd Frederick, Decker,
Yes.
Beth,
No.
Belsky.
No.
12 no, 7 yes.
Number 3.
Same thing, whereas, and then adding to the bullet point. Whereas African-American women only make up 13% of the female population in the United States, but account for 36% of all reported abortions. And whereas the leading killer of African-Americans in the United States is abortion, where over 259,000 African-American babies are killed by abortion every year. And whereas in 2016, as in previous years, more African-American babies were aborted than born alive in New York City. And whereas African-Americans are the only minority that is declining in population, and if the trend continues, by 2038, the African-American vote will be insignificant. And whereas Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, was a devout racist that worked with the KKK and created the Negro Project, designed to sterilize unknowing Black women and others she deemed undesirables of society. And she once stated, "We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population." And the bullet point is incorporate education of alternatives to the risks of abortion in policies and programs.
Mr. Chairman, I rise to a point of order. I would ask the chair to rule that out of order is not germane to the thrust of the resolution.
Abortion is part of health. We're talking about a health resolution. We're talking about the killing of 259,000 African American babies this year, every year. I don't know how that's not germane.
You get a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, I rose to a point of order and I asked that it be ruled germane, which I think is the first order of business.
I'll go along with that. I'll rule it out of order at this point.
Excuse me, you said it's out of order? All right. Second.
Question's been called.
I still have the floor.
You had 3 things.
Okay, I did not cede the floor.
You were done.
I just want to state that I just proposed 3 amendments that affect especially education and the intact families, which has been proven to help bring people out of poverty, and this board voted against it. It just points to the fact that real change does not want to be happening, or this board does not want real effective change happening when it comes to racism. They just want to talk good about it and
Aaron,
not
the
really
question
do
was called.
anything.
You're out of order, Aaron. You're done.
Thank you.
The question was called. We're gonna take a vote on that.
Who called the question?
Frederick, Ronald Frederick, second by myself.
Belsky?
Call in the question.
Closed debate is the
Closed
issue
debate.
before the House.
Yes.
Beth? Decker?
No.
Boyd Frederick? Gashke?
Aye.
Gully?
Aye.
Nordigan?
Aye.
O'Day?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
No.
Palmaville?
Aye.
Nudo? Rose?
Aye.
Wambolt? Winky?
Without playing politics, no.
Uhas?
Aye.
Berg?
Aye.
Celebrate?
Aye.
Franco? Ron Frederick?
Aye.
Did I miss anyone? $14 yes. 5 no.
Debate's closed. On the motion,
Roll call.
So this is Resolution 21 with the amendments from Supervisor Rose and Supervisor Rodriguez. Is that correct?
Yep.
Uhas?
Aye.
Winky?
Aye.
Wambolt? Rose?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Palmaville?
Aye.
O'Day?
aye.
Nudo? Nordigan?
Aye.
Gully?
Aye.
Gashke?
Aye.
Ron Frederick?
Aye.
Franco? Boyd Frederick? Decker?
No.
Celebrate?
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
Berg?
Aye.
Belsky?
Aye.
18 yes, 1 no.
I believe the motion carries.
Motion carries. Resolution 22 from the Legislative Committee, a resolution to conduct countywide advisory referendum on making the state of Wisconsin a Second Amendment sanctuary state. From the Legislative Committee, Berg, no. Frederick, no. Kubicki, no. Winky, yes. Nordigan, yes. Beth, yes. Mauer, yes.
Supervisor Nordigan.
Move the resolution 22.
Moved by Supervisor Nordigan, second by Supervisor Winky. Supervisor Nordigan.
The resolution, I guess it lets us hear from the elected, it lets us elected people hear from the citizens. Let the citizens have a voice, much like the redistricting resolution that's on the ballot now. I've heard from where people were talking about our Second Amendment rights aren't being talked about, being taken away, yet our First Amendment rights are being stricken. So what's the next right that is? I'd like to hear the people's voice on that and put it on the ballot this November. Thank you.
Supervisor Rose first.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you call on me? I oppose this amendment, this proposal here for a couple of reasons. First of all, I think it's a bad idea to start putting constitutional rights on the ballot for a public vote. Today, I'm not so sure about how the First Amendment would fare if put to a vote. I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment, but I don't quite understand what the term sanctuary state means. We've heard something about sanctuary cities in the last few years, and it's not positive, at least in my perspective. The term sanctuary is a term that came about during the Middle Ages, where one would escape to the church or the sanctuary to be protected from arrest from the king. It was usually thought to be an unlawful or unjust or an unfair arrest. So when we make the statement here that we are a Second Amendment sanctuary state, I'm not sure where that definition lies or where we go with it. The proposal before us doesn't define it. We could have a lot of different thoughts about what that seems to mean, but I don't think that it adds to the discussion one iota. And more importantly, it puts perhaps in jeopardy one of the amendments because perhaps you think that this is going to be supported. What if it is not supported? And the takeaway is that the general public does not support one of the Bill of Rights. I'm not going to take that chance. And I don't think that we should take that chance. And I don't think we should vote for something where a term such as sanctuary state is so broad that the definition is confusing and corruptive. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be supporting this. I supported the last referendum. I don't think there's anything wrong with simply polling the public. I had to explain to constituents of mine this afternoon over the phone, responding to emails, that this is simply an advisory. This is going to be sent to the state legislator, the other 71 counties in the state, and the governor. I think that's all the places it's going to be sent. There may be a few others on there. And that's what this is. This isn't going to, where there's no state background checks like we have right now in Wisconsin. This isn't doing anything like that. This is simply us polling the public. And if I remember correctly, from the past, there were supervisors who asked that same question where, why are we scared to poll the public? And I'll be the first to admit, I voted against an advisory referendum roughly 2 years ago, and that has bothered me ever since because I think if the public wants to show their voice on something, I think we should let them do that. That's why I supported the one we had a few months ago, and that's why I'll be supporting this one tonight.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I'm not going to be supporting this tonight. I have spent much of my life around guns as a hunter, as a child, when I was a child with my grandparents, my grandfather, my uncle. I've recently retired from the Army, 20 years. I'm shotgun and rifle certified as a correctional sergeant. I'm a nationally certified CCW instructor, a nationally certified basic pistol instructor. But this resolution doesn't do anything. Advisory, we want to call it we can call that all day. But we had an advisory referendum 2 years ago where 88% of the voters told their state elected officials to bring it to the table, and it was not brought to the table. They didn't listen to the voter, and now all of a sudden we're asking them to listen to the voter. I don't trust them. Those that didn't support the last one. So that's why I won't be supporting this tonight.
Any other discussion?
I'm going to support this. Usually, I'm against any advisory referendums because, again, I don't believe they mean anything. But what I'm surprised more than anything else is the same people, or at least one that spoke tonight, was 100% in favor of an advisory referendum just a few months ago. And actually, I've been criticized because I was asking maybe I was the chairman of legislative at that point, and I said, why don't we talk about it before we'll put it in there? Let's get more ideas. And we did it. It passed almost unanimously. And right now, tonight, they're saying they're against the advisory referendum because it doesn't mean anything. Come on, guys. Let's not change our mind every day on things that we like or don't like. Thanks.
Let's go for another reason. Last legislative committee, I learned something from my failures of talking to people in my community. I'm pretty sure that, correct me if I'm wrong, did any of the authors speak to law enforcement, speak to the sheriff's department or to any of the chiefs on this? Because I've been told no.
I can answer that if you'd like.
Go ahead and try.
Yeah, the last time I spoke to the sheriff, he told me he had hoped that he never had the displeasure of speaking with me again. So I didn't speak with the sheriff, no.
Any other discussion? Again? Go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Go ahead.
I just want to add to that. A few months ago, it was said that an advisory referendum, that's all it was, an advisory referendum. Let the people vote which way they want it. Now, all of a sudden, we don't care what the people wanted or how they're going to vote. No, I don't think it's right. As I say, I was against advisory referendums. I'm still against it. In fact, at that time, I said, we're opening up a can of worm. Everybody's going to start doing that. And talking about politics, come on, that's what it is. This referendum actually was supposed to come in front of legislation committee when I was chairman. And due to the coronavirus, it was delayed. It never came to that. And at that point, even the county executive, he came over and criticized me for trying to put it on the agenda. Also, he criticized the previous board chairman for sending to me to put it on the agenda. So let's do our job and not the county executive job. Thanks.
And no other discussion. We'll have a roll call vote.
Resolution 22. Uhas,
Aye.
Belsky,
No.
Winky,
Yes.
Berg,
No.
Wambolt, Beth,
Yes.
Rose,
No.
Celebrity,
No.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Decker,
Yes.
Palmaville,
Yes.
Franco,
No.
O'Day,
No.
Boyd Frederick, Nudo, Ron Frederick,
No.
Nordigan,
Yes.
Gashke,
Nay.
Gully,
No.
nine yes, 10 no.
Motion fails.
Claims 11, Daniel Edward Sendayak, vehicle damage.
Refer to Corporation Council.
Claim 12, Jeremiah Isla, vehicle damage.
Refer to Corporation Council.
Claim 13, Kim Lishammer, vehicle damage.
Refer to Corporation Council.
Approval of the July 21st, 2020 minutes by Supervisor Beth.
The motion by Supervisor Beth, second by
Second.
Supervisor Rodriguez. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any yay? Motion to adjourn. Who's second? Did I hear a second? All those in favor? Aye. Carried. Adjourned.